Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast, favorite Giant podcast. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and this is it. This is the final episode of the preseason. Later this week, Friday morning, you guys will be hearing us for our first regular season episode, the preview episode of Giants hosting the Minnesota Vikings Week 1, and that will be the 100th anniversary game. So we're going to kick this episode off right away with some big news, and that is that the Giants are redoing the field and the aesthetic for the Century Red game. So that news broke this week. We have a bunch of other news to get to. Mike, tell me what you think. The 100th anniversary field and the Century Red game.
I think it's great that that's breaking news in the big story, but I love it. I actually think it's a great idea. I think that when you are a team like the Giants or the Packers or the Steelers, you should embrace your history. And, that way when you talk to people, new Giant fans or younger Giant fans, they won't say silly things like the greatest Giant of all time was Odell Beckham or something like that. I think celebrating the past. And the Giants have a very storied history. I know we're in the middle of a very bad drought now, and there was a horrible drought in the 70s, but this is a program, a team that's won, 9 NFL championships, including 4 Super Bowls?
8.
That 8. That's still, upper echelon for teams in the National Football League. And we've had Hall of Famers throughout the history of this program, and I think it's great that we are doing it. I think we're doing it in a very classy way. And that logo has actually a little special significance for me because my sister, at least 10 years ago for Christmas, bought me a T-shirt with that logo on it. Maybe I'll break it out for the game or for our show on later on in the week. But I've always loved that logo. I love those old, views of the quarterback going like this, or running backs who are doing the high step and stuff. So I think it's great. And, for a stadium that has absolutely no atmosphere, to give it some pizzazz and uniqueness for that, I think is wonderful.
I couldn't agree more. I think this is the coolest thing. I think this should always be the midfield logo. I know there's so much arguing between whether the NY looks better than the Giants, and and to me they both look the same. They're just a very plain font. One is the city, one is the team name. This to me is a true logo. This is a Giant throwing a foot. It's awesome. And I think that just like its shape with the circle, it fits the center of the field better. I just think it always should be the center of the field. I think it's great.
And there's precedence too, because the Browns now in their center logo, they've done a throwback to something like a logo from like the 50s or 60s also. So it has been done before, and I think it looks pretty cool there as well. So, if the Giants ever do decide to change their uniform again and go back to that 80s look, I prefer the one they have now. I think it's representative of a time, their glory days in the 50s and 60s, and winning 2 Super Bowls as well. They want to go back, fine, but I think embracing all levels of their history, I think is a wonderful thing that they're doing. And I'm very excited about seeing the throwback jerseys for Week 1 and celebrating this whole season.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is going to be cool. I know people think that the Century Red jerseys are ugly. I think it's a perfect way to honor 100 years is to take a really old looking jersey and just throw it back. That this was never an alternate jersey. This is the only way to celebrate 100 years.
It's not an alternate jersey. It's a throwback jersey, and people have to get that in their heads.
Yeah. So everybody acts like it was a choice. They could have done this or that. To me, they didn't really have a choice. If they were going to throw it back, then this is how you do it. So, but I like doing the whole stadium up. I think this is really awesome. And I wonder what other cool stuff there will be, on the video board and stuff like that. Wonder if they do anything to the soundtrack. I'm not
Maybe
sure.
throw in some old Bob Shepard doing some of the PA, like the vanilla announcements. I mean, obviously he's not going to talk about Daniel Jones, but if there's something you can kind of pull out, like attention, Giant fans or something, would that be a nice touch too?
Yeah. Moving ahead, along the same lines, so Malik Nabers finally gets his official number with the official 53-man roster being chosen. The numbers get chosen, and they have done something weird. They got the permission from Ray Flaherty's family to unretire the number 1 and give it to him temporarily. When Malik Nabers' time with the Giants is complete, the number will be retired again. And it's been speculated sort of that, I guess people have strong opinions one way, whether they like it, they don't like it. It's been speculated that this was done intentionally as part of the 100th year celebration to unretire the first retired number in football and shine a light back on Ray Flaherty, somebody who time may have forgotten. So that's been speculated as well. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Cranky fan?
That's idiotic. That's the reason. That's an idiotic reason. I am 100% against this.
I figured you would be. You're a huge grouch about everything.
Oh yeah. I'm very cranky, as the name indicates. But retiring enough. First of all, the chutzpah that a rookie comes in and even thinks that, he's bigger than a team that's been around 100 years to have a number, I think takes an incredible set of balls.
I mean, the story was not spun that he asked for this. This was offered to him.
I don't buy that for 1 second.
Okay.
That might be a story that's spun to make him not like an asshole, but I don't buy that. And even if it is, if that's the case that we offer to do that, I think I know as happy as I am that we are going back and, celebrating 100 years, I think that's a mistake by the team itself. We can argue, and Grump and I have had this argument. I've had arguments with friends of mine talking about baseball, about what should be the criteria for a number retired, a player in a ring of honor, a player that gets a plaque at Yankee Stadium versus a monument, being in the Hall of Fame. That's not what this argument is. If you're in it, you're in it. And to me, to unretire something on a rookie, someone who's never stepped foot on this, turf in a regular season game, I don't know. It just seems like a shiny object. That's honestly something the Jets would do. It's not something the Giants would do. I think it cheapens the fact that a number is retired, and I just don't like it at all. So, I mean, it is what it is. And then, they said it'll be retired again once he's back. What if Malik Nabers all of a sudden becomes Jerry Rice?
They can have 2 numbers retired. It's been done. They already have 2 numbers retired. The number 14 is retired twice.
Yeah, but I mean, that was also at a time when they were both already done, and it's like, oh, both of these guys did it. So I don't know.
No, that's not true. They unretired 14 to get Y.A. Tittle. Y.A. Tittle had number 14, and then they had his number retired as well. So 14 was retired twice.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. That's not the sole reason why I wouldn't do it, but I don't know. To me, especially the first one, also that's a lot different than watering it down to say, oh well, should Ahmad Bradshaw's number be retired or not? We're talking about the very first time it was done, and for them, if they're proactively saying unretired for a rookie, I don't like it.
I'll start by saying I don't give a shit. I don't care about player numbers. It is not something that bothers me. Or I think that it's stupid that they relaxed the numbers rule to begin with. I thought it was interesting and fun that the NFL had rules for numbers according to your position. I never thought that should have been relaxed. But that being said, the Giants have too many numbers retired. They just have far too many numbers retired. It's more than any other football team. It's absurd, and they don't have. One of the numbers that's not retired that should be retired would be Emlyn Tennell's. And I think that absolutely fits. But they have other guys that I think have weak criteria to be retired. So they've already retired themselves into a corner. And the rules, I don't know.
It's also strange they don't have those numbers retired showing in the stadium. Like,
That's true. Yeah.
nobody knows who those numbers. Yeah, like I did not know that fact that we have the most retired numbers because
Oh,
quite
dude, look it
honestly,
up. We have like 13 numbers retired. It's insane.
yeah. But you know something, there's no evidence around the stadium that indicates who those numbers are or or who they represent or anything. So it's kind of one of those. Yeah, it's just in the official records that they're retired, but I couldn't even tell you honestly from like the 87 team how many of them are retired. I'm assuming Sims is retired. I'm assuming LT. I'm assuming Harry Carson, but there's no record of it to really tell. That's easily like on every Sunday. Oh yeah, there's 56. There's 11. There's whatever.
It's true. I agree that if you can unretire a number, it cheapens what it means for a number to be retired. But I also think that having 13 numbers retired cheapens what it means to have something retired.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think they've already cheapened it. I think they should unretire more numbers. I think they should unretire most of the numbers and start over.
It sounds like a Just Giants extra show we'll do next summer. Is
Yeah, well,
we'll
I mean,
evaluate each of those 13 people and like do a little research and be like, this person should or shouldn't. But
yeah,
I see your point.
yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I honestly don't give a shit. I think players care way too much about numbers. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the silliest thing is that everybody wants a number to honor another player that used that number, but that person either was modeling another player or they just took the number that was given to them and they made the number special. So like
Mm-hmm.
I never understood like if you're some guy you idolize Sean Taylor, who cares? If you're good enough on the field, you can make the number 28 the number that every young DB wants to be. I don't know. It's just so silly to me.
Grump, you know why Babe Ruth is 3?
I don't.
Because before Babe Ruth started, there were no numbers for the Yankees, and they finally decided to use numbers. You basically, what number you were in the batting order was your number.
Hmm.
So whoever was the leadoff guy was 1. Some other guy was 2. Babe Ruth hit 3rd. He was 3. Lou Gehrig was behind him. He was 4th. There was no, I want this number for my social media branding in 1924. There was no, that was just, like, to your point, you were assigned this number, and it actually was a meaning for it back then. So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
I think it's one of the dumbest thing that these people, players get really caught up in silly shit like that.
Branding,
Yeah.
self-branding. That's ruling the world in pop culture today, and that's just another little segment of it.
But whatever. If Malik Nabers is happy, then I guess I'm happy. Otherwise, I could care less. Moving forward, huge thing here. So Adoree Jackson got signed. We had said we felt that all along that the starting corner opposite Banks was not on the roster yet. We said that in the spring, right? We said that after the draft. We kind of knew that. I guess there was some hubbub because before he was signed, there was a press conference with Joe Shane, so he was asked meticulously by the reporters about the cornerback position. He repeatedly said that he was okay with it or whatever. I don't care about what anyone has to say, head coach or GM or player at the podium. I mean, 9 times out of 10, if they're doing their job, 10 times out of 10, they are basically lying through their teeth and they are steering the answer towards giving 110% effort and working their butts off and, let the chips fall where
It's
they may.
strategic. I mean, I don't want what's on the mind of my head coach or my general manager or my president
Absolutely.
or my lawn guy. I mean, I don't want them
They
to,
are contractually obligated to answer these questions. Does not mean that they have to give enlightening answers. And if they are good at their job, they should not be giving enlightening answers. So I never really listen very much when they talk. I just watch and see what they do. And we had a tryout in which like 14 DBs were invited, and we signed like 2 of them to the practice squad or 1 of them to the practice squad. I don't remember. And then we ended up signing Adoree Jackson. So when it comes to Adoree Jackson, when we were talking, let me ask you this in this way. When we were talking about the possibility and the probability of the starting corner opposite Tay Banks being not on the roster, what were you hoping for in terms of talent, like, and being reasonable within our budget and, that sort of thing?
I thought something very similar to this was going to happen. I thought for sure there was going to be a surprising name that was part of the cut down list because it was some other team had to get, under the cap and get within their 53, and someone of an Adoree Jackson, someone who would be a veteran stopgap we can just fit in for right now to get us through this year, and then we address it, more of a long-term thing in next year in the draft or free agency. So this is right about what I was looking for.
This was about as good as I was hoping it would get. I really thought that they were going to stay cheap and get somebody on the caliber of like Fabian Moreau, like we did a couple of years ago. To your point, a veteran stopgap guy, who is, maybe athletically on the twilight of his career or just athletically subpar, but, would always be kind of in the right place at the right time, would be kind of a sure tackler, basic fundamental things. Adoree Jackson is far more athletic than that. We still don't know the details as far as I know in terms of like the contract, but he's athletic. I mean, he was the number one. He was considered the number one corner on this roster last year.
Yeah.
With Tay Banks. So this is the same tandem. And, we've already accepted that Tay Banks has to step up and be the number one guy. So we'll see if they flip the roles in terms of who's lining up against who. But this is about as good as I thought it could get. I didn't think it would get any better than this.
I agree. And knowing his way in the building too, and working with Tay Banks before, I think it's just an added bonus. It makes it even more of something I could have hoped for.
Yeah. Now I know Dory was not who we had hoped he would be last year, but based on I think I'm still okay with what he was for the most part last year. It's more so what he was getting paid last year. So I guess it depends on what everything shakes out monetarily, how I'll feel about this. But ultimately, here's some names of the other guys that are on the market. Okay, Xavier Howard, who we probably can't afford. J.C. Jackson, who we probably can't afford. Patrick Peterson, who's like 100 years old.
Exactly.
Eli Apple. Like, I mean, these. I'll take Adoree Jackson over that. You know what I mean?
Sure. And again, it's what my expectation is, and I'm looking at him. Is he going to be with me on this roster at this time in 2025?
Hopefully
Probably not.
Yeah.
Right. The goal is to get us through this year with a need and an easy accessibility and not breaking the bank.
So let's go through really quickly the 53-man roster here. It's been a week, so it's changed a couple of times, which is what I was counting on. It's why we didn't do a reaction video right away. It's because we didn't really think it was necessary. So as we go through this, our predictions were within, I want to say, maybe 5 players.
The margin of error for being really, really, really good, I'd say.
We and I don't know if you even want to count, but Jakob Johnson is currently on the practice squad. He's going to probably flip back and forth.
I'd have to check the hour because he's been on it, he's been off it, he's been on it, he's been off it. So as of this moment, he is on it. Good.
Some things. Gunnar Olszewski did make the roster, so we have a reliable punt kick returner. We were hoping for that. We both picked that, but I think we were both kind of not sure if the Giants were going to do that. And what's interesting is we both kind of had Miles Boykin as the special teams 6 wide receiver, and it turns out to be Bryce Ford Wheaton. I find that interesting. Miles Boykin is kind of a veteran. Bryce Ford Wheaton is someone who I guess impressed on special teams last year. He tore his ACL, and then I didn't really see much of him this preseason. So this feels a little bit like maybe they're seeing things in practice I can't verify, or they're banking on their undrafted free agent. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Everything else we were pretty much right on. Stinney and Kubis making the interior offensive linemen. Neal and Izudu as the backup tackles. Everything else we were pretty much spot on with. Going to the defensive side, we had just about everything here. Matthew Adams was the 6th linebacker on the roster that was supposed to be for special teams, but they put him on IR, designated to return, and they signed a linebacker, so we could not have foreseen that. Curtis Bolton, he will be the 6th linebacker until Matthew Adams is feeling better, I guess. On On the back end, Anthony Johnson Jr. makes the cut, and the addition of Adoree Jackson pushes Nick McLeod into the backup slot role behind Drew Phillips. So, yeah, we pretty much had this one. You had Benton Wheatley making the roster. I had Tamon Fox, but we had this one pretty much right on.
I also thought there was a chance that Flott wouldn't make it, but he made it. So.
Yes, that's true. You did. I forgot about
that. But that was like my one. I'm going to take one flyer on somebody that would raise eyebrows, but it didn't happen. That's fine.
3 specialists, not really that exciting or important. Guys, they moved to IR. I already mentioned Matthew Adams, linebacker Deontay Johnson as well, Yadni Kajust, Austin Schlottman, and Isaiah McKenzie. Yeah. Those are the big names. Some other guys not super important. On the practice squad, some notable names I will list off. The backup kicker, and he is an International Pathway Program player, so he doesn't even count against the roster unless he is activated, I guess. But that's cool to know, Makatami. And so notable names, Jakob Johnson, like I had said, Isaiah Hodgins, Lawrence Cager, Javarius Owens, Alex Johnson, Dante Miller, Tamon Fox. Those are kind of like the biggest names. Maybe Jimmy Morrissey as well.
Did you find it interesting that the guys that we cut on cut down day, no one picked up, and we basically got everybody through to the practice squad?
No, I don't think so. I saw some, like, I'm not sure if it was tongue in cheek or what, but some people on Twitter that were like, none of our cut downs were claimed by other people, and there's something like 26 players claimed in the entire NFL. There's something like 800 people cut.
Yeah,
it's like such a minute percentage. Most of these teams re-sign their own cuts because they are the ones that know their development and whatever. It's only when you're cutting guys when you have a wealth of riches at a spot that people really claim them. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So I didn't find that overly illuminating. What was kind of illuminating is that they had only really made one roster claim, which was Anthony Johnson Jr.
Safety.
And we had anticipated, I guess, that they would go after a bunch of corners, but I would guess that they knew that any like waiver claim corner was really not going to cut it. They're not going to be a starting corner or anything better than what you already have in Cordell Flott or Trey Hawkins or Nick McLeod. So either the Adoree Jackson talks were already going on, or they just knew that they were going to need to do something better than a waiver claim corner.
We didn't hear the numbers yet for Adoree Jackson, right? But we did say something when I think it was the Andrew Thomas restructuring of the contract that we thought that they were either making way for a trade or to sign somebody better than just a scrap heap guy too.
Right.
I mean,
and honestly, that probably is when those discussions started with Adoree, right?
I think so too. I think as well.
Yeah. Moral of the story is don't listen to press conferences. You're not going to hear if your GM is any good, you're not going to hear anything truthful in there.
And don't come back, 7 months later or a year later when you're trying to build your narrative why you should get rid of somebody because they said this.
Yeah.
Please.
All right, so Cranky. We have our roster here. Our season prediction, both of us with different wins at different times, but with the same roster, with the same season prediction of 8-9. Last week you were feeling less positive about that. You said somewhere around like 5-6, which would be worse than last year.
Yes.
Now that you know the roster, Adoree Jackson is corner 2. How do you feel? Is 8-9, 5-6? Where's your this is your last chance to give me a prediction.
Oh, I'm going to say first of all that I'm just very happy that football is back. I'm very happy to be with Grump every week and with our boys in L17 and our friends who we sit with in the seats every week. Having said that, this might be, and I think I said this last year too, this might be the worst football season of my entire life. If any of you saw the dumpster fire that happened in Gainesville Friday, Saturday, my Saturdays will be shot to hell. And I am not feeling all that better about my Sundays. I was half joking, half being serious this weekend, saying the over under for me total wins this year is 10 between the two teams. And, it's very possible Florida might win 3 games this year, which gives the Giants more leeway. But I to me, there are so many unknowns on this team that I have to see on paper before I really start to feel confident. Like, if Daniel Jones stays healthy, if now that we have Adoree Jackson, it's going to take him a couple weeks to get himself into football shape to be playing. If this offensive line plays better and plays healthy, if all these things happen, well, yeah, 7 wins is definitely possible, but I'm just not there yet to be like assuming any of this is. And I know how bad it was last year, and I know our record was probably better than what we actually were. We won a game at the end of the year against Philly. That was garbage time. We had a fluky win against Green Bay. The Tommy DeVito game. I'm still rather pessimistic for this season. I just, I would like to be pleasantly surprised by if all those ifs actually happen and, we trend a little better than I think, but I still see us in that 5 to 6 range. And um, hopefully I'm knocking on wood that for once in our lifetime, the injury bug doesn't ravage this team. So we're not playing with, you know, a Tommy DeVito as our quarterback or another third string quarterback. Or we're getting guys off the street to be on the offensive line, or all these things that happen. We have to get some luck at some point. We're relatively healthy, but that's another if that happens. But for right now, and unless I feel like I have reserved the right to, and I think we will in a couple of weeks, maybe to revise our season outlook for the rest of the year. But I'm still stuck in that 5-6 range for right now. But I'm going to be open-minded that I could be wrong and it could be revised upward.
So I'm looking at this roster, and I'll start with the defense because
Okay.
I think that's where the biggest addition happened between last week and this week, right? You added Adoree
Mm-hmm.
Jackson there, and I don't care how many weeks it takes him to get into football shape. If he is in this week of practice not looking like he is better than Nick McLeod, then we're in trouble for this week one way or another. So it doesn't matter whether he plays or doesn't play. But at the end of the day, throughout 18 weeks of football, Adoree Jackson playing opposite Tay Banks is a huge upgrade over Nick McLeod or Cordell
Mm-hmm.
Flott or Trey Hawkins. So when I look at the only real big loss that this defense had was Adoree Jackson and Xavier McKinney. Adoree Jackson is back. He is not expected to be the number one corner, I don't think. If he can be the number two corner, I think we have two good starting corners. It's assuming a lot for Tay Banks, but what I've observed has been pretty good. Um, Tyler Nubin coming in at safety is definitely going to be a downgrade in terms of veteran presence, obviously, and all that stuff. But I think that Tyler Nubin is going to be an impact safety in about 2 years anyway. You bring in a guy like Brian Burns around the edge to play opposite Kayvon Thibodeau, um, and you're keeping Isaiah Simmons in there for your blitz package third down guy. I think that we're going to be generating more exciting pressure. It's not going to be as exotic as Wink Martindale, and it's not going to come on first down, but I think it's going to be more consistent. I think we're going to see a lot less situations where we're bringing 5 or 6 on every play and somebody's open
That's
on
what
every
I
play.
was.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think that the pressure just coming from 4 and occasionally 5 guys is going to be more consistent on this defense. I don't know that they're going to be better. It might be a drop off, but I think they'll be more consistent. On offense, I see the only major departure being Saquon Barkley. And that's a huge drop back, but I think that that's actually addition by subtraction. I think that that allows Brian Dable to just run the offense he wants to run instead of trying to force feed the ball into his best offensive player's hands. I think that you can actually force the ball into your best offensive player's hands by running the offense you want to run with Malik Nabers. You know what I mean? Like just throwing the ball downfield. I think they got better on offense. I think the offensive line looks unbelievably better. My biggest concern is they are still the same one injury away from being a disaster. There is not one backup tackle on this roster right now. Evan Neal is, at this point, looks like a guard to me. I'm trying to give him time, but it's going to take at least 8 weeks. At least 8 weeks with a new coach, because he hasn't really practiced all spring and summer.
Well, it's also assuming that at this very second they decide he's now going to be a guard, which
no. I'm saying like
they're resistant to even saying that.
Well, I think that for this year they have to continue training him at tackle. I think for their investment's sake, you get a new offensive line coach. It's going to take at least 8 weeks for him to even see a significant change in the way he plays. And that doesn't necessarily mean he'll be better. I think it might take a whole year just for him to start looking like a tackle again and get his confidence back.
So this is year 3, right? And he has a 4th year, and then it's like to pick up the 5th year option.
Correct.
So
they have to decide at the end of this year whether they're going to do that.
Correct. So the clock is ticking on, decisions for him and what path they're moving forward. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And then their other backup tackle is strictly just not a tackle. Josh Azudu is not a tackle. They're trying to make him one. He doesn't look like one. There's no backup tackles on this roster, and that makes me incredibly nervous. And for that reason, I think at full strength this is a better team. I think it's closer to what Brian Dable wants to do, including the defensive philosophy of not being too risky and just playing a strong, tried and true style defense. But with the depth at the most important positions, I think that backup quarterback stinks. I think at this point, Tommy DeVito is better than Drew Lock, and that's saying something. That is not me
and it's also a low bar.
It's not me singing DeVito's praises. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, and at tackle, at the two most important spots on offense, the depth is horrendous. So I think at full strength, 8 and 9, I'm great to stick with, but there's no reason for me to ever think that they're going to stay at full strength. I feel closer to 6-7 wins, somewhere in there.
Okay. I mean, I think we're in that zone of kind of agreement, I think. You might be a slightly more optimistic than I am, but that's okay. We're not out of the ballpark for thinking like this. One person thinks this is a division contender, and one thinks this is the first pick in the draft.
I'm optimistic only because I see a stronger running game. I think that they got guys that can move people, and they have a running back that's just going to run forward. And I think when you have a running game as something that you can lean on, it takes so much more pressure off of Jones. I think that's what's really. Add that into the fact that they were able to win 6 games last year with a much worse roster, in my opinion. I feel like 8 wins is possible as long as everybody is healthy. But once people start getting hurt, I'm going to start dinging wins. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That running game, again, that's in my laundry list of, I think I need to see it a little bit to believe it.
Yeah, I don't know. You watched the preseason game in which everybody looked really good running the ball and said you saw nothing. So
I wasn't. Yeah.
I have no idea what you were looking at. So
well, I mean, let's revisit that after 4 weeks and see.
Yeah, I mean, preseason doesn't really mean shit. So
let's give it a fair sample size. In 4, because again, I'm going to put everything that I said I saw, but I will also check myself because again, we have not seen this offensive line play together yet. The starting offensive line.
That's true. So we've only seen 4/5 of it. So
yeah. So what I think I saw, the way I perceived it, is again, it's not what I. At some point, and I hope we do, and that's another thing. We never see our starting 5 play together. That's a problem. With injuries and different things. Eventually they're all going to get together, and then again, I think I need to see a quarter of a season before I can start saying, that's kind of right about that running game, or no, it's much more what Grump was thinking.
So, last question before we end this. If you were to send your scouting department out around the country
Mhm.
to draft your two biggest needs, what positions are you sending them looking at?
For next year or for
Yes.
this team?
Well, I mean, yeah, for next year, but whatever.
I'm doing my first of all, I'm doing my 100% diligence on quarterback, and you know, there is definitely a world where Daniel Jones is healthy, and Daniel Jones proves he's a mid-tier quarterback who can be successful when we move on, and we don't use that pick. But this, if I was a betting person, which I am, I think it's more likely that this is the last year of the Daniel Jones era. And to me, you are nothing in this league without a quarterback. So my number one would be quarterback for sure. Uh, Number two, I probably am looking at cornerback. Again, as we said earlier in the show, that we have a very capable stopgap, but again, we're kind of razor thin, and we that is not Adoree Jackson is not a long term solution. I want to get another lockdown corner. So those would be the two guys that I would be looking for if I'm drafting where I anticipate I will be drafting, which would be probably within the first 5 to 6 picks.
I'm not sure that we're going to be picking high enough for a quarterback, but I think that I am looking at all quarterbacks anyway because either Jones plays well enough that it's not an immediate need, and if a quarterback can get into your lap, you're still taking him anyway
Mm-hmm.
because you're planning on replacing Jones. Or Jones is absolutely garbage, the season's a wash, and you actually do have a shot at one of those quarterbacks. So either way, I'm looking at quarterbacks because I'm looking to get one, even if I decide keeping Jones for another year is smart because the dead cap hit is worse or less. So,
Let me jump in real quick too. I think even you made a point about you're not sure where we'll be drafting for a quarterback. I think if the decision is made to move on from Daniel Jones, I think we'll be very aggressive in moving up to get the quarterback that they want. Not just to get a quarterback. If they decide Carson Beck or they decide, whoever is that guy, I think they'll be very aggressive. And they might even overspend to get that guy. I
yeah,
don't think they're gonna let this I don't think they'll let that guy go through because we're drafting seventh and you know, I think they're gonna go for it.
yeah. I mean, also, I mean, they may not be drafting even seventh. Like they may be drafting in the teens. It's not really obscene because if they end up winning 8 games, that's you're at 500 at that point. Like,
That's true, but most likely, if we're drafting in the teens and we're 500 or something, Daniel Jones has done enough that you're probably not as interested in the quarterback as you
that's
you
that
might need to be.
exactly what I just said though. So like
Yeah,
in that case, you're kind of looking. It's like, well, if one of these quarterbacks falls to me, or for whatever reason, if Carson Beck is too old or whatever, and he starts falling to the point where we can trade up and get him, I'm still going to get him and keep Daniel Jones for one more year or something. Let him sit and learn. You have that flexibility with the way Jones's contract is structured, but
yeah,
either way, I'm looking at quarterbacks as one of my two positions, is what I'm saying. And I
gotcha.
understand corner. I get that. But right now, I'm still looking at tackle. I see. At this point, we've had Andrew Thomas since like the 2020 season, 2019, 2020, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He's been around a while. He has not been healthy for a full season very often, if at all. Um, that's in of itself a problem. Jermaine Illuminator is a free agent signing. Evan Neal, we don't know what his future is. He may be moving inside to guard at some point. You need a backup tackle anyway. I think that worst case scenario when you draft a tackle and you have two really good tackles and then Jermaine Illuminator and Evan Neal is that you can trade somebody. That is the worst case scenario.
He,
You
he
should
would
always be 3 tackles deep on a roster, in my opinion.
tackle was third on my list. It was very close to cornerback.
Yeah,
So,
and corner is third on my list. I think that
mhm.
you can probably get a quality corner, you know, And like I said, there's a chance you can't even get a quarterback anyway, and so it shifts down to your 2 and 3.
Yeah. But you were asking about, the question was, where are your scouts going out? It wasn't kind of
Right.
like,
Yeah,
okay,
it's
I
true.
know we're locked in at 6. It's like, okay, a scout, get me the information on this. Go target this.
Yeah. Good point. But I mean,
Mm.
otherwise, when I look at the roster, there's no spot that I feel is super duper weak. I think they could maybe use another edge rusher, maybe somebody else in the defensive line. I like the way this roster is constructed.
The weak part for me is just the thinness of it. And
Yes.
it's not a position on the field, but it is just as important as a position. And, on the surface, if we played a 17 game schedule and everybody stayed healthy, it's all right. But, that's not going to happen. We all know that. So that's when we start getting we'll have sleepless nights.
So we're gonna pray for some health, and that'll be that. And we will see you guys on Friday morning. We will have our first preview episode, so we will revisit our predictions. We will go through new predictions. We will go over some matchups, and we'll be back in the swing of things. Cranky, how do you? It's football's back. I couldn't be happier.
Well, I couldn't be happier because what obviously happened Saturday, but for this, I'm just happy that we're back in the swing of things. I'm happy that, like I said, we're all going to be together at the tailgate. I'm happy we're going to be in the stands. I'm happy, we're not just, it's been since January 7th, I think, where all we've been doing is talking about this team and
Mm-hmm.
not really watching this team. And, I love talking, about the Giants with you and with everybody, but it's time to actually start watching games. And that's what we're doing here. At the end of the day, it's about watching a team and watching, and we are all, hyper Giant fans, and we get into the minutia of the soap opera of it. And I'm just happy it's back. Going from the heat of the summer into the winter when it gets cold, and just I love everything about it. And we've been conditioned now to being so bad for so long that it hasn't taken away my enthusiasm for the season starting or getting ready for opening kickoff, and you know having that beer with you before the game or the hot chocolate towards the later part of the season. So I'm just glad it's all back, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at the tailgates and in our seats, and and all that. So
I'm happy
we all
football's
win the
back.
we all win the off season, Grump. Remember that.
The first drink at the tailgate is the best drink because everybody is 0-0.
That's right. Yeah.
All right.
Well said.
We will see you guys Friday morning. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.